Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petite to Queen's Claim Your Career Crown podcast. I'm your host, Lynn, and today I'm joined by our special guest, Jürgen Strauss. And today, Jürgen and I are going to be talking about how podcasting is the secret to building community. And I have to tell you, I've had the wonderful opportunity to get to know Jürgen over the last several months, and I want to tell you about him. He is a podcaster, speaker, podcast strategist, marketing strategist, and connector of amazing humans. His business, InnovaBiz, partners with thought leaders to enable them to build sustainable visibility, professional credibility, and a deep connection with their dream clients. The result is that they grow their network, grow their business, and they get to make a difference to more of their ideal clients. As a podcast host, Jürgen has held meaningful conversations with hundreds of outstanding entrepreneurs from all around the world, gaining insight into what makes them tick and lights them up, why they do what they do, and what inspiration and value they can add to the rest of the world. Prior to founding InnovaBiz, Jürgen worked in the science and chemical industries, leading large global multinational teams across Asia, Europe, India, North America, and Australia. He spent years at that intersection of technology, science, human behavior, marketing, and business management. Wow. And I am so thrilled to welcome you to the show today, Jürgen.
Thanks a lot, Lynn. It's a real privilege to be here and have another conversation with you. And I'm quite astounded. that sounds like a really fascinating resume. I'd love to meet that person.
Well, you're right here in the flesh with us. So, and before we dive in, for all of our listeners who are joining us for that very first time, make sure you don't miss out on a single episode by subscribing to Claim Your Career Crown wherever you get the podcast. And if you love the show and you love what we're doing, please take another second and leave us a 5-star review. We would very much appreciate it. Well, Jürgen, I want to really dive in because this is something I don't know. How did you go from that corporate world into what you're doing now with the podcast strategy and building community and making these connections with amazing humans?
Well, it was kind of a roundabout circuitous journey. And if I tell the story now, it sounds like it was very strategic and it all happened. And looking at it in hindsight, a lot of it does make sense. And it's my major regret really is that I didn't see that in advance, and I could have actually implemented a lot of the things that are now in place a lot sooner and perhaps been a lot further down the journey than I currently am. But going back to my corporate career, as you mentioned, I had an international role. I traveled a lot. I had a wonderful opportunity to meet people from a whole range of different countries, work with them, build relationships with them. I needed to build relationships with them to actually achieve the results that we wanted to achieve. And so one of the things I was always and still am is insatiably curious and wanting to learn anything that I don't know. I want to learn about that. And that really served me in building those relationships, because what I would do, in addition to learning about what's their problem and what are the issues that they're facing that I might be able to help with, it was also around, well, how do things work in this country? Because I see a lot of things happening that are so different to what I'm used to the environment I'm in. And that gave me the opportunity to learn things and to expand my horizons. And it also helped me build relationships that were deeper than just business relationships. After about 21 of those 23 years in my last company, I suddenly found myself, well, it probably wasn't sudden, but it felt sudden, found myself not wanting to go to work anymore. I really didn't enjoy work. And for 21 years, I'd really enjoyed my work. I'd loved my work in every role I was in. And so there was this shift that had happened gradually, and suddenly I became aware of this, I don't want to go to work anymore. It took me 2 years to get to the point where I need to really make a change. I can't sustain this. And at that point, I had the opportunity to take a package, and that's when I left, used that money and invested it in some training for myself and started my own business. One of the things early in developing that business, I started building relationships with people locally, because with an international role, one of the things that I was missing in my kind of framework was lots of strong connections locally in my local network, in my local business community. So I started building those, found a couple of mentors, and one of those mentors suggested to me, you should start a podcast. It's a really good way to position yourself as an expert in your field, and to get your message out in this particular medium. And I'd always been a fan, even back in the days when audio books were still on cassette tapes, I'd always been a fan of listening to the audio medium, and was really a keen listener of a lot of podcasts when podcasts started coming out. And the mentor helped me understand, because I always thought, oh, you've got to be kind of a radio specialist and have a proper studio and everything to do podcasts. The mentor helped me understand that you can start small and build up, and there are things you can do from a little office or even from home. And immediately when I changed my mindset about, yes, I can do a podcast, I then connected back to my corporate world and thought, I've got all these wonderful relationships with people in senior management roles, even business owners of fairly large companies internationally, that I can reach out to them and say, hey, can we have a chat about what you're doing? And that's how I started the podcast. And one of the things I learned very early on from those people is that many of them would say to me at the end of the podcast, you should also talk to so-and-so, and they'd give me an introduction to somebody else. So then I started asking for that introduction of each guest. And before I knew it, it just kind of was like this spider web that started growing my network with that. And I'm an introvert, so I find it really hard to go to a networking event and build relationships with people just cold, whereas this was just so easy for me. And before I knew it, I was at 50 episodes. In fact, episode 54, I had Michael E. Gerber on. And for a relatively new business, a relatively new podcaster, to have a 1 hour effectively masterclass with Michael E. Gerber at no cost to me other than a little bit of investing in background research and a little bit of time to do all the editing afterwards, and then get to share that, of course, with my audience. That just blew my mind, and it's just gone gangbusters from there.
Yes. Well, and that is I love the progression, because that also led you to what you're doing now. And I'd like to dive into the inspiration for how you pivoted your business to what you do now.
Yeah, well, we were still in the early days. We ended up doing a lot of websites, because when I first started, the intent of the business was really, as you said, to help people build that deep connection with their dream client, to identify who their dream client is, and to build a systematic marketing strategy around that. Now, when we first started, it was global financial crisis, 2007, 2008. People said we have to tighten the belt. Marketing was the first thing that we sort of take off the list of spend. And I found it very difficult, and we've had this conversation around sales, right? I found it very difficult to convince people that they should be investing in marketing at this time more than ever. And so what would happen was a lot of businesses would say to me, yeah, but what we need is a website. We'll forget about the marketing right now. What we need is a website. And whilst my business wasn't a website business, I knew how to do websites from a strategic point of view. I'd been on a team that built a big website, big training website, global website in the corporate world. But of course, and I knew the strategy, I knew how to develop the strategy. I knew how to set up all the connections. What I didn't know was all the back end stuff, because we had IT specialists and programmers that did that part of the work. We had people that wrote the copy. We had people that did design work. So what would happen was several businesses would say to me, no, we're not going to spend anything on marketing, but can you do a website for us? And I said no. And the third time I heard that, in the space of a couple of weeks, I thought, there's a message here. So I said yes to that third one. Went ahead to figure out what do I need to do the design work and the technical background and so on. Figured a lot of it out myself, got some help with people who could help with some of the areas where I thought it's probably better I get an expert to do this, and approached the website build from the point of view of this is a tool, it's a strategic marketing tool. So I kind of snuck the marketing strategy in there at a sort of a low level, because they were only paying for a limited piece of really the big program. And so that's how it started. And then as people got back in favor with the idea of investing in marketing, then the business started to grow with those marketing programs that was really my strength, and some of the strategic work and systems that we build. And more people would ask, how's the podcast fit into all this? And what do you do? I love what you're doing with the podcast. And how did you get connected to this person? And I love what you're teaching us here and what you're bringing to the table here, because I'm bringing information to the table that is way beyond my knowledge, because I've got experts in all these different fields that I may know a little bit about, or I may know nothing about, but I've got an expert speaking on my podcast. So people actually go there to learn about this topic, and they were fascinated by that. So this podcasting started to find its way into our marketing as a marketing tool. And more than that, I realized that I was developing this skill of having conversations with people and drawing information out of people in a way that I started applying to other things. So as we were writing content, I said, we'll write the content in your voice. Just get on a call with me and we'll have a conversation. So that was kind of like a podcast, but the strategy or the intent of that conversation was to develop the content for that particular website, or for that particular marketing program, or for that particular email newsletter campaign. And that worked really well for us as well. So the focus more and more has come back to this, having a conversation to generate content, which of course is what a podcast is.
Well, it is. And I love how you basically, really incorporated the strategy around podcasting and the value of podcasting for building community, and your story of how you built the relationships in this way. And so now when you work with clients and you are working on a podcast strategy and that community building, do you have a specific process that you follow for your clients? How do you work with them?
Yeah, well, we have a couple of frameworks that we use. We have a marketing framework that I use, which is our innovation blueprint for marketing. And it basically goes through 3 phases, which you could call them the know, like, and trust phase. The classic marketing techniques are kind of talk about funnels, and we like to think of it more as a journey. Yes. So it's a journey that if people, if you think of this funnel metaphor and you say, okay, this happens to be an ideal customer, and they find their way through to the bottom of the funnel, and now they're in whatever container you're collecting them there. Most businesses kind of say, okay, that's done. Let's move on to the top of the funnel again. How can we get more in there? Whereas our approach is this is a journey, and those people that complete one circuit of that journey, in other words, they're now a customer, they've bought a product, it's up to us to actually continue to nurture that relationship, whether it's supporting the product that they've purchased, whether it's delivering an outstanding service with the service that they may be purchased to. But it's also the next step of that, and that's really making them feel special and encouraging them, I guess, or motivating them to talk about us, to give us testimonials, to actually promote us to their circle of their network, so that that helps us grow our business. And also, if there's opportunities, if we're testing new things out, if we're launching new products, they get first look at that, unlike many businesses that kind of throw that at totally new clients where they don't have a relationship with, or special offers get thrown at new clients because they're focused so much on, we want more customers coming in, we want to grow our business by getting more customers, and they kind of forget the people that have supported them up to this stage, the people that they have a relationship with, the people that really deserve to be first thought of when here's a special offer or here's a new product I'm testing out, because they're the ones that you have a relationship with. It's not a cold outreach, it's warm, there's a relationship. I'm assuming that, of course, that it's a good relationship, and to reward them with first offers or with special discounts is the better way to go about it. So we see this whole thing as a circle, and we've drawn our process map actually as a circle that as you come around, we say, well, the last step is actually how do you scale and systemize what you've done up to date, and then essentially you start again because it may be there's another product or service that you have. So then it's the first steps, of course, are getting to know the ideal customer and so on. That might be for a new product or new service might be a quicker thing than for the first time you're reaching out to people in a marketplace. But the important thing there is then looking at, well, does this fit the need? Is the need actually there for this with this particular client? And then going through those stages of giving the opportunity to get to know the product. They know you as a business, but giving them the opportunity to get to know this new product, going through all those relationship building stages, which are now kind of relationship with a new product or a new service, or growing the trust in you that, yeah, I'll experiment on that because I now have greater trust in you.
Yeah. No, I mean, the easiest business that you can get is from existing clients and the referrals that they provide to you, and just additional business with them. So that is brilliant. And I think more people need to, the old saying is, dance with the guy who brought you to the ball. It's the same
I love
thing.
that metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was something that I learned really early in my sales career, is to really, and it's not what you did for me yesterday and not what you're doing for me today, but what are you doing for me tomorrow? And to be always forward thinking with your existing clients and further developing that relationship. So, kudos. I mean, that's just brilliant. So, as we're getting back to what you've done with building community through podcasting. Now, is this something that you incorporate into strategy for your clients?
Yes, it is now. So the community around the podcasting, how that happened was we got to 200 episodes, and I thought at the time I was in this phase of being much more aware of not celebrating enough some of the achievements. And there were this, like we all have this human tendency to, I could have done that better. And so we kind of beat ourselves up. And so, why did I not think of that? Why did I overlook this? Or why did I take this approach when actually I kind of knew up front that it was a big risk So we always beat ourselves up when things don't go according to plan, but we overlook those achievements. And there's so many achievements we do every day. They may be tiny little things, but it's always worth stopping and celebrating those. So I was in that kind of phase of reflecting on that lesson and thinking I need to celebrate more, because by celebrating the little achievements, it reinforces that whatever I did to achieve that is good. I need to keep doing that. And so we got to episode 200 published, and I thought I need to have a celebration here. And how can I have a good celebration here? So what I did was invited all the guests that had been on up until that time to an event that we had. And it was in the early days of the COVID pandemic, so I couldn't do it live. And of course, it was kind of short notice, so it would have been hard to do it live anyway with people scattered all around the world. What I did was set up a Zoom call, and I structured it in a way that we could actually have some meaningful conversations in a group setting. And it was a celebration, but it was also a way for people to connect. And I was a little nervous about this, and I was sort of almost hesitant to do it, but I thought, no, I'll do it. And I think I had about 40 or so, maybe even 50 people turn up to the event. And there were a few technical hitches and so on, but everybody had a wonderful time. They really loved it, and lots of connections came out of that, of people that hadn't met before, didn't know one another, that then went on to become business opportunities, or many podcasters were there and people wanting to do guest on podcasts. So that opened up a lot of those opportunities. And there was even one fairly significant business deal came directly out of people that I'd introduced on that event. So I thought, wow, that's awesome. And I started running those events every couple of months for my podcast guests, and refined them. And each time people loved them. And then I got busy again, so I didn't run one for a little while. And then I ran another one, and again, everybody loved it, and it came good. And I thought, I wonder if I could build out this concept to more. And so that was the idea of the community. So what we have now is a platform that every guest of the podcast gets to join, complimentary. And in that platform, they can have conversations whether I'm there or not. They can, in fact, there's every month, there's a random set of introductions goes out to everyone, introducing them to one other person from the community and inviting them to have a chat with that person. So that's kind of the digital virtual version of the events that I was running, and that's ongoing all the time. So people take up that opportunity, they chat to people, meet people, and that's led to new connections, podcast opportunities, and so on. In addition to that, I'm looking to build that community out. I've started inviting listeners into that community. So listeners will actually pay a small premium. That's kind of, rather than do a Patreon thing for listeners where they support the podcast, I'm doing it through the Flywheel Nation community, I've called it. And there, they will then get the opportunity to join that community, to talk to guests of the podcast, to get access to me, of course. So if they've listened to a podcast and they say, oh, gee, I wish Jürgen would have explored that particular topic more, I really want to learn more about that, they can jump on that platform, ask the guest some more about that. And I'm hoping that ultimately that opens up possibilities for guests to actually pick up new business, and people to really learn and build trust with those guests and identify whether that is a person that they really want to be doing business with in a fairly easy, low risk environment. And in addition to that, we'll be doing masterclasses regularly in there where I'll bring guests on and I'll do some myself. So I've got some ideas there. So that'll start fairly soon, a monthly masterclass in that community. And we're also testing out some things related to the blockchain and NFTs, where people can purchase their own permanent copy of the conversations and maybe some related stuff.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. My goodness gracious. And of course, I'm very familiar. I am have had many introductions through the Flywheel Nation, and it's just amazing the different people that I've met. So thank you for that. People I would not have necessarily encountered any other way. So, and I like the idea of the celebration. I mean, our 200 has come and gone. I don't even remember. I think we're past 250. So 300. We'll make it the celebration.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
That's a great idea. So here's the question, especially when you're working with, your clients and, maybe the podcasting could or could not be a part of that strategy. But what do you find is, now that we're past the financial crisis, that was the 2007-8, and then the COVID, what now are you encountering that holds people back?
Well, the main thing, I mean, if I talk podcasting or before podcasting, I was talking about the importance of regularly putting some content out on their website. So even in the very early days when we were just building websites, in those days where that's all people were willing to spend, I said, well, once the website's up, you've got to regularly put some content on there. You've got to be posting blog posts. You've got to be putting information out that people can find, that people can see, okay, that's what you're about, and can start to connect with you. And the main thing people said was, I don't have time, and I don't have really anything to say, which kind of, I don't have anything to say is a pretty easy one to debunk, because I would usually start with the customers ask you questions, and I would point them to Marcus Sheridan's book, They Ask We Answer, or They Ask You Answer. I'm not sure exactly what the title is, but it's that sense. And his whole philosophy, and this goes back to, I think it was the global financial crisis, where he was running with a couple of business partners in-ground fiberglass pool company. And of course, that was a discretionary spend that people started cutting back on, and the business was suffering pretty badly. And he was new in the business, and he analysed what can I do here, and he basically started writing blogs every day, answering the questions that people had. So they would ask, is it suitable for my block of land because it's sloping? Is it, I've got a clay or I've got a limestone thing, what do I need to do there? So they'd have lots of different questions. Obviously, how much does it cost? Is this better than a concrete pool? Is this better than an above ground pool? What fencing do I need around it? And so on and so on. There's probably 1,000 questions that I can't come up with right now. But if you're considering a purchase like that, you've probably got lots of questions. And his philosophy was, ask that question in a blog post, answer the question in great detail with a lot of information. And as a result, and even today, I think that business is just going gangbusters. I think they've sold it, but it's still going gangbusters. If you can't remember the name of the business now, but if you search in-ground fiberglass pools, that will be the number one thing that comes up in the US. And it's because of that philosophy of answering the questions of the client, the potential client. So I said, well, that's where you start. Get all the questions that you've ever been asked. Do you do training? Have you done a presentation? Have you written something somewhere else? Do you have a book? If you've got a book, well, you've got content everywhere, and sometimes you've already done it. It's simply a matter of taking it and repurposing, adapting it for that particular medium. So that was the thing that I still say today to people that say, well, actually it addresses the time in some ways as well, that people say that I don't have content. And with the time, I talk a lot about the repurposing. Yes. And I say, well, what content do you have in place? And let's look at how we can reuse that. And particularly for podcasts is brilliant. If you don't have a podcast, but you've got a book, or if you've got 100 blog posts, Well, there's 100 podcast episodes that you could do with very little effort. And yes, of course, you've got to edit the podcast, you've got to produce it, you've got to set it up to start with. But if time is the only issue, then invest some money and get somebody to do that work for you, to set it up, to do the editing for you. There's lots of people that do podcast editing, but that's a very easy, time-efficient way to get content out in different formats that will speak to your dream client, and they can see what you're about, and they can assess and say, well, we like that person, or no, we don't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always recommend people start with, what are the top 10 questions? What are the top 10 pain points? And what are the top 10 objections? And then start answering them. And to your point, and you can, the easiest thing to do is just to talk about it. Literally have somebody, another partner or a team member or a trusted peer, and just literally set it up like an interview. And that provides that first piece of content. And I think it's Seth Godin who says, if, you don't have writer's block, if you can talk,
That's
just
right.
start talking about it, and record yourself and get the transcript. With today's technology, it's just phenomenal. And then you just, from there, you can build everything out. And people absorb content in a lot of different ways, and repetition is important, because just like how you learn your ABCs or your multiplication tables, it's from that repetition, and people need to hear things multiple ways. So I love that. So Jürgen, if you wanted to provide a piece of advice to the audience who's tuning in about something they can do today, tomorrow, next week, that would help them move their business forward to make, really create more impact, what would that advice be?
I'm going to combine.
Loaded question.
It is, and there's probably many. I'm going to combine something that I heard in your conversation with Tom Ruich, who's also become a good friend of mine over the last 6 months or so. And it's around, I guess, as business owners, we're all here to make a difference to our clients. We're all looking to have an impact and maybe even scale that impact greater. And part of that is you've got to get your message out into the hands of those dream clients. So I'd combine a couple of things and say that focus on building those relationships and then strengthening those relationships with your dream client. You have to know who that is, of course, but certainly the ones that you're already working with, that you already love because you really enjoy working with them, you're making a difference in their world, they pay on time, they reward you adequately for the work you're doing. There's a really good relationship. So focus on continuing to invest in that relationship with more content. And the part that I'm going to steal from Tom Ruich is become a better storyteller, and tell stories that put the client as the hero of that story, and that is entertaining, but also in a way that there's a lesson in that for the client in terms of what they can do, how they can improve their business, and where you might fit in to help with that. And one of the things that one of my guests, Tyler Foley, I was talking to him about speaking, and I thought this is a really good idea also for building a story portfolio that you can use in the content you produce. And he said, split up your life into chunks. And he had a mathematical formula for how to split it up. But basically he said, take seven periods of your life and just go into a quiet space, reflect on those periods. What's the first and most memorable experience that comes to mind? And then write that down and write a story about that, because there'll be a reason why that experience came to mind, and there'll be sort of underlying and underpinning things. What did you learn from that? How did that change you? How did that impact you? And with that, you've almost got straight away got 7 kind of story frameworks, and you could probably expand on those using mind mapping or something similar. So yeah, bring that together, develop a catalog of really interesting stories, listen to Tom Ruich's podcast because he talks a lot about the power of storytelling to connect with your dream clients, and then get your information out there and repurpose it a lot. So write it in blog posts, put it on video, put it on social media, do a podcast if you can, just get it out there and really focus on the relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't have to have your own show as a podcast host. You can be a guest.
Yeah.
A guest is the easiest way to get started in podcasting.
It is, yeah.
And to do that. And everyone who's tuning in, you can listen to Tom's episode, which is, I don't know how many episodes in front of this one, Jürgen, but I'll make sure that we include the backlink to that one as well, because Tom is amazing. And and that's the power of the community also. Once you get started in podcasting and guest podcasting and the introductions, and you start to get to know all these different people. And that is, I'm just always amazed. And as you said, amazing humans, the connection with amazing humans. So Jürgen, thank you so much for sharing
how podcasting
is how podcasting is the secret to building community. So I know that our listeners are going to want to know more about you specifically and how they can connect with you.
Yeah, well, the best place to connect with me is either on LinkedIn or go to my website, innovabiz, innovabiz.com.au, and either fill out the contact form, or there's a little chatbot of me actually on video, and you can send me a message there and I'll respond to all those messages. And if you are interested in joining our community, our Flywell Nation community, then that's flywellnation.com, and that will take you in there and get you access to all those amazing guests, connect you to all those amazing humans. More importantly, it will also give you the entire process that we use for our InnovaBuzz podcast. So it'll give you the process we go through, how we identify guests, how we start to build relationships with the guests, how we bring the guests on board, how we work through all the back office stuff that needs to happen with the podcast, and how we build community and relationships once someone's been a guest on the show.
Yeah. It is brilliant. And we'll include all of those links. So Jürgen is just a click away. And thank you so much. This has been such an informative discussion. And thank you for everyone who tuned in. And if you have ideas that you would like to share, you can leave us a comment down below. We love hearing your thoughts. If you have a specific question or would like to suggest a topic for discussion, you can email us at jointheconversation@petitetoqueen.com. And to stay current on all of our insightful advice, our breakthrough advantages, amazing episodes like the one today with Jürgen, please go ahead and sign up for our weekly Wisdoms newsletter, and you won't miss a single episode of Claim Your Career Crown. So thank you again for everyone who tuned in. And Jürgen, thank you so much. This has been such a delight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. It's been a pleasure to have a chat with you. I've really enjoyed it. It's been fun. And I'd like to invite the listeners to do one thing right now. And that's because of this wonderful service that Lynn's providing and all this information that she's sharing. If you've listened this far into the show, there's two things I'd love you to do. The first thing is, if you loved this conversation, or if you loved another conversation that you've heard Lynn with, for example, Tom, share that conversation with the people you think that would help. And secondly, leave a review.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.